I get into it. I'm not used to there being a podium, so this is an adjustment. I'm a walker and talker. I'm going to take this out. It makes me feel short. Okay. So a little bit about me. So I worked in Republican politics. I started in Florida politics, actually. I've been doing this for 8 years now. I grew up in the panhandle of Florida, so I grew up in Pensacola. And then went to University of West Florida, and then I got started in politics years ago because I wanted to see a difference. I wanted to make a difference, and that's, people would tell me when I was younger, that's like a young woman's idea that you're going to change the world. Right, and here we are, all still trying to change the world. And I knew that I wanted to do something where Jesus and politics kind of came together. People told me I was crazy and I was never going to find it, and it didn't exist. And so I went into the campaign world and on the policy side, and I worked in 6 different states, moving every cycle, finding the next best candidate to work for and the next dream to chase. And then finally, I found my way to a wonderful organization, and you guys have one of my favorite chapters here, CatholicVote. CatholicVote is an awesome organization that does its best to amplify the voice of Catholics in the public sphere and inspire Catholics to find their way into the public sphere. However, we don't just represent Catholics. We represent people who believe in traditional values and who believe in the importance of faith, family, and freedom. So, I am the political director for CatholicVote, so I travel around the nation, meeting with smaller groups, candidates, politicians that are in office, and talk about what does it mean to vote like a Catholic, take what you're learning in the pews on Sunday, take it to the polls on Tuesday. And so a big part of my job recently, when I first interviewed with CatholicVote a year and a half ago, they said, why do you want to work here? And I said, well, I believe that we're going to see the overturn of Roe versus Wade, and I want to be a part of it, and I want to be on the ground. And they said, well, we don't know that that's actually happening yet. This was a month before the leak. And then I got the job, and then Dobbs was leaked 4 days after I got the job, and I was like, wow, jinx that, called it. Like, I was so excited. My boss, Brian Birch, called me, and he said, did you know something that we didn't know? And I was like, just the Lord. And so we quickly got on the phone saying, okay, what are we going to do? Where are we starting first? And Kansas was the first battle. Kansas happened quickly and unexpectedly. Kansas was a unique vote because they were really just voting to allow the legislators to even legislate on abortion. So the vote was saying, was abortion a constitutional right, period. There wasn't a lot to it other than that. There were a lot of lies and misinformation spread by the left. I know, we're all shocked. And we ended up losing that. We lost Kansas by 18 points. I shut my laptop around 7:45. And I just knew there was no coming back from it. And there was no reason to continue watching. And then the next fight was Michigan. And we were like, okay, Michigan. I live in Ohio now, which is sad because who moves to Ohio from Florida? But a little backwards, but here we are. I live in Ohio. I live near the Michigan border. And so I took that very personally, and I was like, all right, let's go, Michigan, let's do this. We got involved pretty heavily in Michigan, doing postcards, phone calls, working with the Catholic Conference, and working with the Michigan Right to Life there. Michigan was very disorganized. I mean, so was Kansas, but Michigan was very disorganized. Nobody wanted to work together. Kansas was scrambling. Like, you can't really blame Kansas because it happened so quickly that there wasn't time to prepare on our side. Turns out the Democrats have been prepping for a very long time, which again, that's very common with them. They're good at organizing. And so in Michigan, we're like, all right, we have a chance to work together. Nobody wanted to work together. Everybody wanted to do their own thing. We lost by 13 points. And then we come to Ohio. And I live in Ohio, so I was like, this is home now, and I'm not going to live in a state with late-term abortion. It's not going to happen. Ohio and Michigan were different too. So Ohio and Michigan, the way that the amendments are written, and this is how you're going to see most amendments written in the 12 states to come in 2024, is it leaves the term reproductive freedom very broadly. And so with the movement to redefine the transgender surgeries as part of reproductive freedom, it then includes transgender surgeries in the reproductive freedom. And in Ohio and Michigan, it allows for minors to have abortions and transgender surgeries without parental consent or notification. And so in Ohio, we had a vote in August. The legislator said, okay, this is a big deal. Let's try to stop it before it hits the ballot box, because once it hits the ballot box, then it becomes scary for us. Because it's a lot harder to get into the ears of every voter to say, there's something bigger here that you're not saying. This isn't about pro-life versus pro-choice or pro-abortion. This is so much deeper. And so they put something on the August, they put together an August special election. So the legislature pushed it through, and the special election made it more difficult to change the Constitution in Ohio. But, of course, the left poured a lot of money into that because they understood that if we raise the threshold from, right now in Ohio, it's 50% plus one to change the state constitution, which is very low. And we tried to move it up to 60%. They got so ahead of us with the messaging, and all of their ads were like, protect the Constitution, save your rights from, and because they knew that Ohioans were God-fearing, 2A, pro-life Americans. They care about Ohio families, faith, freedom, like that's Ohio, right? And so they knew that, so they did their messaging that way. Because they're not scared to lie or mislead as long as they get to where they're trying to go. And so that's what we faced in August. And so let's be honest, money's an issue. In Ohio, for the August special election, they spent $15 million to R4. And a huge percentage of that came from California and New York. As you're seeing here now with the decline of sign movement, you're going to continue seeing even worse than what we saw in Ohio, because to them, Florida is even more of a battleground state. So it's easy for us to scream about money. They have more money than us. That's just the case, unfortunately. Hollywood's behind them, and that's just how it is.
California's a mess.
Right. So yes, absolutely, California. So, but what we messed up with, and what I've seen continuously, is the disorganization and the ego fight. The pro-life movement has had a lot of awesome people leading it for many years, and everybody wants to be the guy or the girl that got it across the finish line. Now that we're past Roe. And it can't be like that. You have to work together. And sometimes that includes groups like CatholicVote. We, in Ohio right now, so we're getting a second bite of the apple in Ohio because that was for the August. The actual abortion amendment is on in November, and none of the polling looks fabulous right now, which is not uncommon. But something we've done is we're willing to step aside and pay for something with someone else's name on it because we just want to see it get done. And we need more of that attitude from pro-lifers who are trying to make a difference. So that's one takeaway, is the disorganization and the struggle of who wants to be in charge. But I think the main takeaway is the messaging that we were used to pre-Roe just doesn't work. The messaging that I grew up with, you guys have seen for the past 50 years, about the life and about the baby and about the quality of life and about how, it's after viability and heartbeat. All of those talking points where we're trying to get them to understand that this is a baby, this is a life that doesn't work. Because either they don't care or they've heard it too many times, they're desensitized to it, and it's not going anywhere. The messaging has to change. So, we can talk about what's not working, but let's talk a little bit about what does work. Is in each of these states, what we're seeing is a Trojan horse with a much darker agenda. So whether that's the trans agenda, pushing it on our children, whether that's pushing late-term abortion for any reason, which is the broad health description that you guys, I'm sure, have heard about a million times here, and the attack on, ultimately, the ACLU's continuous attack on parental rights and cutting parents out of our children's lives. And those are the messages that we've seen work in other states. And I know it's easy to say, well, has it really worked? Because have we actually won? But the truth is, we were able to see with certain tactics, because you are able to run polling and see what was effective, what wasn't effective. If we had $14 billion, what could change the world? And one of the tactics that worked super well in Michigan, we were able to see that postcards gave a 10% raise to people getting out to the polls to vote for our issue. People who would not have voted before or had not voted in the past, receiving a handwritten postcard. The front of it said, "Pray for Michigan." The back of it was a volunteer saying, "Hi, I'm Logan, I'm a Catholic from Ann Arbor, and I'm urging you to go vote, on this issue." So we were able to run polls on people who received those postcards, and we were able to see a 10% lift, which is huge. That's a major lift. So imagine in our case, if all the Catholics in Michigan if we were able to send a postcard to every person in Michigan, what type of difference that would make. So that's one thing that I think you guys should have on your roster. We provide, our Catholic Vote chapter will provide them with pre-addressed cards that say Pray for Florida. And they look like a real postcard. They're a real postcard. On the back, the addresses will already be printed on them of Catholic voters in the area who need to be getting out to the polls. And then you'll be given a suggested handwritten note. So that's one thing that works really, really well. Another thing that's important is relational politics. And this is something that the left has been very, very good at for a very long time. You get people to do what they need to do, what you need them to do, because they either have a connection with you or they know that you care about them. They know that you care about their well-being. So if I'm reaching out to somebody in my community or in my church, they're more likely to listen to me than somebody who's calling them from a phone bank for a campaign. So what that means is organizing within your communities, precincts, things like that. So it really needs to be very, very localized. Another thing that works really well is letter to the editor campaigns. We send out a form to kind of help people write their letters to the editors with all the addresses and email addresses attached. So it's really easy for them to do. I would definitely suggest either I can help you put one together or you guys can put one together and flood these people with letters to the editors. They will publish them. We've seen it elsewhere. They will publish them. A lot of people say, they're not going to publish us. They're like a left-leaning media. They will publish you. Maybe not as much as they publish the other guy, but they will publish you. And people care when they see those things come in the newspaper. So those are the most takeaways as far as what makes a big difference. Is people are only going to listen to you if they know that you care. And so the community is the key. It's really, I don't want to I feel like I'm giving a lecture right now about what to do with this, but that's what we're seeing. And in Ohio, the battle's still going on. It's coming up until November, and it's still rare that we get a second bite at the apple. To be able to look on a map and see exactly where we should have done better and where we could have done worse. And it's easier for us to look now and say, okay, I'm looking at, the map of Ohio. Cleveland's where we lost. We didn't do as well as we should have in Cleveland. So now in November, we're very lucky because we have the opportunity to retarget. And we are retargeting with news stories that we're circulating about community members. So getting people surrounding Catholic schools and getting stories chummed up around those areas. And then we're doing a very rigorous postcard campaign. Last time I looked at the tracker, we were at 56,000 postcards sent out to Catholic voters in Ohio. And we are going to take that same initiative that we did in Ohio, and we're going to take that and do that in Florida. So we will be here. You'll probably be seeing a lot more of me with these lovely ladies and trying to help get people organized and get people out, because at the end of the day, they've always had a head start on us. They were always ready to hit the ground running, and we need to make sure that we're matching their speed and we're matching their energy. And this is about more than just life or death, even though that's a lot, right? Life is preeminent, but this is about so much more, because it's really easy for us to say, well, my kid's normal, they're not gonna get a sex change surgery, or my kid's not gonna get an abortion, I have little Tommy's totally normal. But what about your kids' kids? And the Bible says a wise man not only provides for his children, but his children's children. And what type of world are we creating, and what type of normalcy are we allowing? The left often wants to say things like, well, nobody gets late-term abortions. Well, if nobody gets late-term abortions, then why is 15 weeks not enough? Nobody gets late-term abortions because it hasn't been legal long enough for us to have any studies on who's getting late-term abortions. So how about that? 72% of Americans agree with 15 weeks or less, and only 10% of Americans, this is nationwide, only 10% of Americans agree with late term. So why do we need late-term abortion in every single state? We don't. They want it because they want to make it normal, so that way our grandchildren's generation thinks it's an okay thing to do. They're doing the same thing with the trans movement and the attack on parental rights. They're trying to take us one step at a time away from having a say in our kids' lives and having a say in our kids' futures. So I applaud you guys for fighting the way you are. Please make sure that you have my contact information if you guys have any questions, and let me know how we can better assist you. But the biggest takeaway, to sum it all up, is don't be afraid to work, not only with the county party, with the Catholic conference, with different religions. Make sure everybody's willing to work together, and sometimes that means swallowing our pride and listening to ideas from people that we don't always like very much. Sometimes the best ideas come from people that we don't necessarily enjoy. And so I always tell myself, sometimes you have to close your eyes, listen to the idea, and see if you like it on face value. And so I would definitely recommend doing that, and then really look into doing postcards, trying to do things outside of the norm. They've been sending postcards for a very long time. They did it in Kansas. I sat in on the Young Democrat Socialists, for whatever that group is. I sat in on their training for Kansas.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah, yeah, it was a really, really fun way to spend my evening. And yeah, and so I learned that they've been doing postcards everywhere, and they've been doing text messages, person-to-person text messages, not mass text messages. And so that's what we're implementing, and I definitely would recommend you guys do the same. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.